So HBO just released the very first teaser trailer for The Last of Us TV show. And coming from the biggest fan of the games, it looks great. So great, in fact, you can almost tell what every single scene is meant to be and what they represent from the games. So let's do just that. Let's break it down scene by scene and go through the entire trailer and try and figure out what it is, what each scene may represent, or what it definitely is from the games. Because I have a feeling that I know exactly what a lot of this is meant to be.
The roses have faded, there's frost in my...
So within the very first few seconds of the trailer, it's pretty easy to tell what this is. It's very clearly the Boston quarantine zone, where Joel, Tess, and Ellie live at the very start of the game. We see a warning sign on the street that even says, "Report signs of cordyceps infection, coughing, slurred speech, muscle spasms, mood change. The safety begins with you," with a little Fedra marker. The sign above it reads, "Curfew hours, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Anyone on the streets without Fedra approval is subject to immediate arrest," which is also something directly ripped from the game. We then see some Fedra soldiers making some civilians paint over a Firefly mural. Either maybe they were caught doing it, or maybe they were just people who were forced to do this. We see a lot of propaganda for the Fireflies in the game. Literally look anywhere in Boston, all the way up until right before about Pittsburgh. A little side note on this, there is Firefly propaganda anywhere that you can look in the first game. However, there is a lot more of it within the Boston and right before Pittsburgh section.
The birds in the morning don't sing anymore. The grass in the valley is...
We then see Pedro Pascal as Joel and his broken watch. Obviously, the scene is after Sarah's death. There isn't necessarily a way to pinpoint exactly when the scene is, because there's literally nothing to the scene except for just the watch and Joel. But my money would be on an emotional scene, just the way that Pedro Pascal is emoting here. I would assume that this might be right after Tess's death, or my original thought was that this could possibly be right after Joel wakes up by Tess banging on the door. Obviously, the bad dream that Joel wakes up from in the very beginning of the game is the very beginning of the game, the events that lead to Sarah's death. That is what I would assume, at least. So I think him and the watch being the only two things we see in that part of the scene, I feel like it would have to, because the camera focuses on the watch for a little bit. I think it would have to somewhat have to do with Sarah. These shots are of Ellie. One of them is her looking at some Firefly graffiti. This little sentence being their mantra: "When you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. Believe in the Fireflies."
Remember, when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. Believe in the Fireflies.
This next scene of Ellie chained up somewhere, I originally thought was also in the same place as the other scene. The atmosphere seemed to match. The lighting, the broken up pieces of wood on the floor, and the destroyed wall that the propaganda's on. I originally thought these two scenes took place in the same area, but the chained up sequence is definitely in David's place, but I don't see a reason for there to be any Firefly propaganda in David's town, so I changed my mind on that, but the atmosphere sort of matches, which is why I thought it, but I don't know.
Starting to die, and out in the darkness the whippoorwills cry. The darkness is falling.
We see a little bit more of the Boston QZ and outside of it, which we'll get to in a second, but first I want to talk about our very first shot of Ellie, and there's actually nothing to go off of here. But I'd argue I could possibly make some guesses as to where this could be in the show/game. My first guess, because she's hidden from us, the audience, I would say she's possibly not introduced yet. She's not a character yet. And this is her watching Joel and Tess bring Marlene back to her in the beginning of the game. Another theory I have is this could possibly be in Bill's church, since there's what seems to be stained glass window next to her. to her right. I wanted to get that out of the way because I literally have no fucking idea. That could be anything, but I think I got a pretty good idea there. But I want to move on to these shots of the Boston QZ and downtown Boston. They look incredible. Seeing the QZ is as interesting as seeing the QZ could be. It's cool. It's militarized. Whatever the fuck. But that shot of the two fucking buildings collapsed on each other. Oh my god, it's so fucking good. It's literally ripped directly out of the game. That's how good it looks. It looks like the exact same thing. And on top of that, we have the scene of Joel, Tess, and Ellie hiding in the pipes from the Fedra agents and their spotlights, which is also ripped right out of the game.
Sky has turned gray, a hound in the distance is starting to...
If I'm honest, I can only wager guesses on this. We don't see a whole fuck ton of electricity throughout the first game, but my bet is that this is Nick Offerman's Bill, I believe. But it doesn't really make sense because if you watch or played the games, he doesn't exactly have electricity. He even only lights the rooms that he's in with lanterns. But I would say that that's probably him. But then I looked at what he's actually looking at. It looks like security camera footage of the QZ. So then I thought maybe it was some character that we see in the QZ. Maybe it's one of those people who smuggled Joel and Tess out of the QZ. Maybe it's one of the guys who smuggled them out, watching to make sure none of the Fedra agents are going to see Joel and Tess do whatever they do to get out of the QZ. Maybe they don't use the tunnel in the show. We then see Joel and Ellie looking down at these two bodies in a field. Now, I'm going to assume that this is the same field that we saw in that promo image released a long time ago of Joel and Ellie looking on a plane crash. It's also eerily similar to a promo image for the first game that they released a long time ago, of Joel and Ellie looking out from a similar looking field, but you don't see what they're looking at, it's just them. Before I get into where this is, because I think it's pretty obvious, I'd like to say that in this little scene, it seems like we're seeing the world through Ellie's perspective. We're afraid with her. We're not being quiet and being ready and prepared like Joel and Tess are. We are afraid. We are frantically looking around for approval and directions on what to do because we are scared. That's what Ellie is doing, which I think is a good thing because this is our first time, for anyone who's seen the show without playing the games, this is your first time into this world. So you want a person who's your fish out of water, who will experience the world with you. They do this in a lot of stories, which I believe is what they're going to be doing with Ellie. But moving on, the clickers that Joel, Tess, and Ellie run into here are very clearly at the Boston Museum that Tess gets bitten at the very start of the game. I obviously mentioned this a little bit. We finally see clickers. And as you'll see later, they look incredible. They sound incredible. This scene is actually scary, which bodes well for the show. We then see Joel and Ellie walking across this snowy bridge, which to me can only take place after Davidstown, because if you've played the games, Joel gets impaled right before the winter section, so Ellie has to take care of Joel. So it's impossible for it to be before Davidstown, and it can't be during Davidstown because Joel and Ellie are separated, so it has to be after. And this shot of Joel walking alone through this little area is most likely in Billstown, because of the way the cars are set up in that truck. It looks like it's meant to block off areas and reroute clickers or infected. We then have this shot of a crying Ellie, which I originally assumed was while she was taking care of Joel in the basement. That window in the background being up high, at least that's what it looks like here, kind of gave me the idea that it was a basement. So I just assumed that this is during the winter section, Ellie taking care of Joel, because she puts him in a basement. But I also saw this little shadow behind her. I can't tell if it's her shadow moving when she does, or if there's actually someone behind her. If it's someone behind her, I don't really know where this could be in the game. I would assume that maybe it could be during the Left Behind DLC, but it just doesn't make sense because they don't go to a house. But if I'm honest, there being a little thing underneath the window, like it looks like there is for her to jump up on, it definitely seems like it's during the winter section where she hides Joel in the basement. It literally looks the exact same. Then we see a shot of Merle Dandridge, who also played Marlene in the game, reprising her role as Marlene in the show, which is pretty cool. She's standing next to, I believe, would be someone in the Fireflies. Uh, I don't have a specific name for her or anything like that. I just would assume it's another Firefly. But judging by the blood on her stomach and her holding the wound, I'm assuming that this is right at the very beginning of the game, right after she finds you and Tess killing Robert because she was shot. And this scene definitely takes place during the Left Behind DLC when Ellie and Riley find a carousel in the mall and they ride it after they fix the electricity. This little thing on its own deserves its own little blurb of speech. Neil Druckmann is co-writing this show. He even directed an episode, I believe, from what I've heard. But if you guys don't know, he's the game director of the second game, and he had a very big input on the first game. I don't believe he was the game director, but I believe he was one of the writers. So that's very exciting.
This is your chance.
We then have our first look at Sarah, Joel's daughter before the apocalypse. This scene takes place at the very start of the game where everything goes to shit. Now in this scene we have Joel with a sniper at a window. Now this is very clearly that scene in Pittsburgh with Joel trying to shoot down at the hunters and the infected and the tank that's trying to kill Henry, Sam, and Ellie. Now this scene here is the actress playing Tess and a bunch of Fedra soldiers in what looks like the quarantine zone, but could just honestly be any city street. And she looks terrified, which is actually something we don't really see in the games. Usually Tess seems to be very cool and collected right up until the very end, which is actually something I like about Tess's death a lot. She doesn't show any emotion at all until Joel and Ellie leave the room, and it's just her. So it seems like they're going to go a different route with Tess's death. We then get this shot of Joel and Sarah looking at a younger Tommy through this little fire here. It looks like it's a car on fire, so most likely this is right after the car crash at the start of the game.
You keep her alive. And you set everything right.
We then have our first shot of Bill, and he looks to be coming up on this hole that someone is trapped in, probably one of his traps that he set himself. Now, I don't think that this looks like Pedro Pascal, so I don't think that this is Joel and Ellie he's coming across. I believe that this is most likely going to be an origin story of how he and Frank, his partner, met in the games. Now, it's never explicitly stated, but I think it's very clear that there was a romantic relationship between Bill and Frank, but it's never exactly said, so I'm assuming that they're actually going to show it off during the show, because Frank was casted. We then have the scene of this little dinner date going on, which it appears to me like the two people involved are wearing suits, so I'm going to just go under the assumption that they're both guys, which would also bring in Bill and Frank. I am a little confused on how this could be Bill and Frank, though, simply because if they met during the apocalypse, how is this little situation happening? It looks like there's lights going on in the glass, so maybe this version of Bill's town has electricity, and that scene of him at the CCTVs is actually him. I actually sort of like the idea that Frank is what brings back Bill's humanity, but when Frank ups and leaves, he loses it again. We then have Joel beating the shit out of a Fedra soldier, which I believe would probably be at the very beginning of the game, where they get found by the Fedra soldiers and they find out that Ellie is immune. It's also literally storming during a scene where in the game it's also storming, so to me it makes complete sense. We then have this scene of Ellie, which seems to be her hiding from clickers or infected in the Boston Museum. I only assume that it's the Boston Museum because the antique furniture of the wooden leg to her left and what looks like the window behind her. This woman here is apparently meant to be the leader of the Pittsburgh Hunters, which are the people you fight against in the Pittsburgh section of the game, and this is obviously the tank that you fight as well when you're with Henry and Sam. So I think we're going to spend a lot more time in Pittsburgh, maybe an episode or two, or maybe even 3, which would be crazy, and we just fight the Pittsburgh Hunters, which I think is actually a good thing. The more time we spend in Pittsburgh with these characters, the more heartbreaking the radio tower sequence is. We then have this scene of Joel and Sarah looking out the back of Tommy's truck during Outbreak Day while a plane crashes into the ground below, very reminiscent of the scene of the truck hitting the gas station and the truck hitting the movie theater in the beginning that also caused these huge explosions. We then see this shot of a man running towards another armed person in the background, with fire all around. I originally thought that this is probably just another scene of Outbreak Day, but I'm going to maybe say that this could possibly be Henry in the Pittsburgh section when they are storming the bridge. I only say that because I looked at this image for a little while and I sort of noticed his hair, and I think that the man probably has darker skin, so I'm going to go under the assumption that this is Henry during that section where they're storming the bridge. I also sort of want this to be Henry because they don't show Henry or Sam in this trailer at all. So I'd rather it be an integral character than just some character in the Outbreak section. A small little tangent I'd like to go on. We don't see a lot of important characters. We don't see Henry or Sam. We don't even see David. We don't see a lot of Tommy. And we don't see a lot of Bill. But Bill's not in the game that long. We don't even see a lot of Marlene. Marlene's in the trailer for half a second, and she's the main villain of the game. Giving the benefit of the doubt that this is a teaser trailer, so it's only really supposed to give you a vibe of the show, it is still a little strange that we somehow didn't see a lot of these characters that we meet along the way. That was really all I had to say about that. I'm just going to assume that this is a hunter during the bridge section, and this is similar to the scene that I thought was Henry running towards that guy, so that's why I assume that this is the bridge section specifically. We then have this scene of these horsemen running out during winter, which I immediately took Jackson vibes from, but that doesn't really make sense because you don't visit Jackson during the winter. We then see Henry, Ellie, and Sam running from the technical, which is a little strange that they're in the trailer, so those scenes are edited. They're just not in the actual trailer itself. Once again, it is a teaser just to set the vibe, so I'm just going to assume that when the official, actual big trailer comes out, there will be more of the side characters you meet along the way. I also don't think that this scene takes place during the bridge section. I sort of think that this takes place while they're running away from the tank while Joel is firing down on the streets below. The only reason is it's lit similarly to the scene of Joel in the house. Complete theory here, but I think that the woman sitting in the chair there is Tess, and this explosion is possibly what kills her. I was originally going to go on and keep talking about that, but I hope they don't just give Tess a random death. I think part of the reason why Tess's death is important in the game isn't that it's a a sacrifice necessarily, but more in the line that she was bitten, which gives Ellie another reason to want to become the cure. We then see this scene of Joel carrying Sarah through what looks to be a bar or restaurant of some sort, which is very reminiscent of two scenes. One being the scene where Joel tells Sarah, just keep looking at me, rather than having her look at all of the dead.
Don't look, Sarah. Keep looking at me, baby.
There's also the scene of Tommy, Joel, and Sarah in a bar, where Tommy tells them to keep going and he'll hold the door.
Go! You got Sarah! I can outrun him!
Uncle Tommy?
I will meet you there! Hurry!
Now, this scene of Tess looking at a bunch of people running, I would assume is at the beginning of the game where there's an explosion at the gates of the QZ. This scene right here is actually why, another reason at least, why I think that they possibly changed Tess's death. I believe that that's Tess dropping that lighter, but I don't see a reason why it would be such a significant thing that it's the main focus of the shot of her dropping a lighter, unless it's some sort of sacrifice. Maybe there's something on the ground that when it drops, it'll explode, which is what caused the explosion in the previous scene that I talked about. This scene is very clearly the crash scene that gets us introduced to the Pittsburgh Hunters. This scene obviously takes place right after Joel had found Ellie in David's town, after she just killed him trying to save herself. Now, a lot of the internet has an opinion that I used to agree with, that Bella Ramsey was not right for this role. Seeing this scene in the trailer told me why I was completely fucking wrong and I should shut the fuck up. She looks great. She's doing exactly what she needs to be doing in this scene, and I think she's doing it very well. And I'm actually genuinely excited to see her performance in the show, where when this was initially announced, I did not like the casting at all. People seem to be very dead set on getting a girl who looks like Ellie or even similar, when that's not really what we need. We need someone who can act like Ellie, who has some of the same mannerisms of Ellie. Like, for example, Ellie oftentimes when talking to someone and doesn't know what to say or working up the courage to say something, she will play with one of her fingers, or she will pace back and forth, not really knowing what to do. She does it a lot. But these small tics isn't exactly what's important to Ellie's character. Why she does them is. We need someone who portrays being fierce, childish, imaginative, nervous, afraid, and confident all in one. This person needs to be able to scare us, because we're not able to see what they're capable of, and it needs to frighten us. It needs to jump out at us the way it jumps out at Joel when he realizes that she is ready. For example, in this scene, we see a strong person. We might think badass the second we see these scars, but we also see her face, her reaction. She's shaking because of what she did in a previous scene. We see these things, and we understand that this is a part of her character because that's how she is, not because of how she looks. She doesn't look any of those adjectives. She looks like a normal teenage girl in either parts, part 1 and 2. But we see those things because we see the character. If Bella can act those things, we will believe it. The same way that Ashley Johnson acted that out for Ellie and we believed it. I mean, could they have dyed her hair red? Probably, but that doesn't matter. What matters is her acting chops. That's it. If she can portray Ellie and all of those characteristics, that's all we need. And after seeing this interview, and you can literally see how excited she gets to talk about The Last of Us, you can tell that she's enthusiastic about the project.
We've seen a very small snippet of The Last of Us.
Yeah.
Very small snippet. You can't tell us anything, I'm sure, but how excited were you to be part of that, and will fans be happy with how you've converted it to the small screen?
To me, this actress embodies Ellie. Literally just in this minute-long interview, you can see all the mannerisms I was talking about. You can see the childish goofballness. You can also see the nervousness a little bit.
I was so excited to be part of it. It's one of the only games I'd actually heard of previous to filming it. Fans can expect similar themes to the game, and it will feel very familiar, but with a whole new, fresh, a whole I was going to say breath of fresh air, and then I was going to say fresh shake, and it got like mixed up. But you're going to love it.
If I'm honest, the original reveal trailer we got, that 30-second promo that we got a month or two ago, put a bad taste in my mouth. But this trailer and this interview with the actress actually saves face for me. I think it makes me a lot more excited. I'm more confident in what's going to come out. Moving on to the actual trailer again here. Sorry about that weird tangent. This right here, this clicker looks incredible. I'm actually genuinely excited to see them in the show. The bloaters, shamblers if we get to that part. The stalkers as well. Oh my god, the stalkers will be awful. I hate them. I'm so excited to see the infected and everything that will come with a Last of Us TV show.
Save who you can save.
Oh, please understand.
Starting with this shot of Joel and Ellie riding Callus on this little hill here, it could be at any moment in time after they visit Tommy's. They're probably heading to Colorado like they did in the games, but I know that some of the places are changed up. For example, in the show, they're not going to be heading to Pittsburgh. They're going to be going to Kansas City, I believe it is. Even though there's literally nothing to this scene, I could probably tell you exactly where this scene is. The lighting, the look, I could tell you. This is most likely where Joel, Tess, and Ellie are crossing away from the museum, and Tess looks back at Joel and says that she's just cargo or something along those lines, and he looks at his watch and notices these similarities between Ellie and Sarah. Now, if you were paying attention to the trailer, you could actually hear a voice talking over about the back half of the trailer. It's very clearly Tess talking to Joel, telling him that he should take care of Ellie. It's very reminiscent to what she says in the game. Although in the game, Tess is very adamant on Joel bringing Ellie to Tommy so they could get to the Fireflies. Tommy is not mentioned in the trailer. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's not the plan during the show. It just simply means that it's not mentioned here.
You've got to get this girl to Tommy's. He used to run with this crew. He'll know where to go. You get her to Tommy's.
In the trailer, she says, "You keep her alive, and you set everything right. Save who you can save." Like I said, this is clearly Tess just before she makes her big sacrifice, pleading with Joel, telling him that they literally have the cure for mankind, so cure mankind. Overall, this show looks incredible, and you can bet your fucking ass I'll be in front of a screen the nanosecond each episode drops on HBO. I've never been more excited for a show, especially an adaptation. Now, video game adaptations don't have the best track record. I mean, just look at Uncharted that just came out. But everyone knew that movie would be shit just by seeing that Mark Wahlberg was meant to play Sully. That's just fucking ridiculous, don't get me started. The point I'm trying to make is we all sort of knew that that would be shit. I don't have that feeling with this show. But if I'm honest, my very first fan cast for Joel when I found out there was going to be a live-action remake was immediately Pedro Pascal. And I'm so excited that he got the part. He looks incredible. But a recent development, I'm a little nervous for his version of Joel. Do not get me wrong, Pedro is definitely a competent actor, but it seems like he's not trying here. That whole "you have no idea what loss is" scene is kind of scaring me. Because in the games, you can see the way that Joel is literally seething. He's shaking with anger and disbelief that Ellie would begin to compare anything that she went through to the loss he experienced with Sarah. And then in the show, it seems like Pedro Pascal simply said his line and then got a paycheck.
You have no idea what loss is.
What is this? This is...
I'm sorry. What the fuck? And don't get me wrong, Bella's not much better in this clip, but at least you hear a little bit of emotion behind her voice.
Everybody I have cared for has either died or left me.
You have no idea what loss is.
Pedro Pascal is a fucking A-list actor, and this motherfucker has no emotion in this scene. Holy shit, I'm afraid. I'm afraid for that scene specifically and his portrayal of Joel. If I'm honest, hearing that he has never played the game and he actually refuses to play the game is low-key kind of worrying. That is my only gripe with this show. Everything else looks great. The casting is on point. Nick Offerman as Bill, are you fucking kidding me? That's incredible. Pedro Pascal as Joel, if the motherfucker puts on his big boy pants, he's great.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel, but I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. Everybody I have cared for has either died or left me.
You have no idea what loss is.
This is not what I was expecting. What has happened?
I actually have no words. That's fucking insane. Look, I'm super excited. And I don't want to put a sour taste in anyone's mouth, especially myself. I'm very excited. And I actually cannot wait for this show. Even though I am a little worried about this version of Joel. Because the show does not work if Joel and Ellie don't. Joel and Ellie are the heart of the first game, and they are definitely the heart of the second game. There is literally no show if they don't work. It's over. Episode 2, because I'm guessing episode 1 is just up until about Sarah's death, and then episode 2 is everything after the 20-year jump. If episode 2 comes out and Joel just ain't acting, then fucking, I don't know, man. It's gonna be ass. I'll still watch it because I'm in love with this property and this story. It's literally my favorite story ever. I think it's the best story ever told. So yes, I'll be watching it, but holy shit, I hope he fucking does his job. So why does such an iconic and important scene to the game and show look like this?
Because I'm too lazy.
Do I actually think Pedro Pascal is being lazy here? No, I don't. But I do think it is sort of ridiculous because this is an adaptation of something that already exists. You're supposed to imitate, which is what he says he doesn't want to do. You're supposed to be like the original, even slightly, and you change it up the way you want to do it. If you are going to be making a movie or TV show about a book, say for example Game of Thrones, which is something else he was in, you're going to read the book. According to the Game of Thrones wiki, he also did not read the Game of Thrones books, but he claims to have not had enough time to have read all of them. What he did do is read the parts that his character, Oberyn Martell, was in, which is still better than what he's doing with The Last of Us. You can literally sit down and watch a YouTube video 2 hours long of all of the cutscenes in the game, and that pretty much gives you the entire story. Obviously, there are some dialogue things that you won't be catching because those things are happening in gameplay, but that's fine. As long as you get the basic gist. That's better than what you're doing when you claim that you won't do it just because you don't want to imitate. But you did do that for Game of Thrones, so do you not like to imitate? Do you want to be different? Do you want to be the same? Do you want to be similar but have your own take on it? This is of course an opinion, but a very strong opinion. I just believe that Pedro Pascal doesn't care about this project because in his mind this is some silly video game thing. This isn't something like Game of Thrones. It's not coming from a book. What type of story can you tell from a video game? It's very confusing because he's actively participating in the story, I would assume, so can't he see how impactful it is?
You've been cast in the upcoming adaptation of the video game, The Last of Us.
Yes.
Can you tell me how to get out of the hotel basement level?
No. I was really bad at the game. It's not a skill that I developed.
You never beat it?
No, I can't.
It's actually very strange seeing someone that I did not like originally in their role, like Bella Ramsey as Ellie, And now I'm definitely in her corner, and I'm much more in her corner than my original fan casting for Joel, Pedro Pascal. It's very interesting how this trailer very much shifted my views on what I think could come out of this. I, once again, think Pedro Pascal is an amazing actor. I just don't think he's trying. At the end of the day, the original trailer that we were talking about in this video looks incredible, and I am extremely, extremely excited to see it. I am going to be worried and skeptical about Pedro's acting, but that's not because he's bad. It's just like what I said. I just don't think he's trying. And I'm very excited to see all of them. I'm excited to see this game come to life, and I'm excited to share it with people who aren't interested in video games. And be like, hey, this story came from a game. This story that you love so much, the story that you're seeing right now, and it's so good, came from a game that I've been playing since 2013. You've been missing out. In conclusion, Jaime Lannister would have been a better Joel. I'm not going to elaborate on that. I'm just going to point it out. It's true. It's a fact. Look it up.
You have no idea what loss is.